Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of What the Football. Suzy and Amy with you as always. Andrew Whitworth will join us momentarily. I think he's got a birthday coming up. We'll have to talk to him about that. But Aim, I had a great weekend. I went up to Vancouver for the last of the Taylor Swift Eras tours. I took our son Xander up on Friday to Vancouver, which by the way was incredible. I've never been there before. Have you been to Vancouver?
Eons ago.
Yeah, it was amazing. And what was funny about it was two things. Number one, greatest show of all time. I may be her biggest fan. Impossible because it's clearly my son. But what was funny was because you're in Seahawks territory, you hear a lot about the Seahawks. And it made me think, oh, God, we haven't really talked about the Seahawks much on this, on What the Football. But we will, I'm sure, bring that up at some point with Andrew Whitworth. Because obviously the Rams are rolling, and it's been a really fun time to watch the NFC West.
Well, and the NFC West is up for grabs. It's going to come down to these final weeks, and it will be fun to discuss that with Andrew.
Meanwhile, I almost didn't make it back in time for Taylor's championship basketball run this weekend. Full disclosure, we lost the championship. We won the semis Saturday to get to the championship on Sunday. Whatever, congrats to Team Avi and Sam. You know who you are. But it was so insane getting out of Vancouver on Saturday. Jackass number one, I showed up at the airport with like an hour and 10 minutes to go thinking, oh yeah, we're going to just march through. We're carrying our bags on it. Idiot forgets that we're in another country. The WestJet people were so nice and so terrific and helped me get there. I basically went to them in tears and said, I am coaching my daughter's 11-year-old championships for the Goldies Youth Sport League. I'm like, you got to get me through. I'm begging you. And they were so nice and got us through what should have been a 3.5-hour wait to get out of Vancouver. I am the luckiest person in the world. So thank you, WestJet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We lost, but the girls played great. We'll be back to coach another game.
And I am going to come watch you coach. I would like to see you coach.
It's something. It's something. The masshole in me comes out, but I mean, it's just so much fun to coach.
And just so you
girls.
know, I'm not silent when I'm in the stands.
No,
You'll hear me.
I would imagine.
You'll hear me.
You would be happy to know that there was a King Cone truck at the end, so there was ice cream to be had for all. As promised, Andrew Whitworth joins us now on What the Football, and thank you so much for your time. I want to get right in off the top about the game, the Rams game the other night against the Bills. It kind of felt like they got the offense that they've been wanting all season long. Starting the season, we thought it would be that high-powered offense, and injuries hit. But we really saw a resurgent Rams team the other night. Wondering what you thought.
Yeah, it was awesome to see. I mean, it's crazy to think week 13 and 14, we finally get a Rams offensive line that they intended to have on the field. It's been all year long. Somebody's been banged up or not been available to them. And then obviously you also lost Cooper and Puka Nacua at different parts of the season. So it's just great to see them have their group, be able to go out, put a game plan together with everybody they expected to be out there on the field and go execute 2 weeks in a row. And so I think this game really is one that you started to think, is this like last year when they finished the season 7-1 and got really hot and made a chance to the playoffs? There's a good window right now. They have a clear window if they can win this Thursday night in San Francisco for an opportunity to go get in the playoffs and beat Seattle at home week 18 and win the division.
Well, you're absolutely right. A clear window with a lot of divisional games to go in a division that's up for grabs.
It is. I mean, you look at it with really Arizona losing to Seattle Sunday. Now you've really created a scenario where Rams beat Seattle the first time. So if you look at it, they beat San Francisco this week. They go to New York, and then they play at home against the Cardinals. That game week 18 for Seattle, because of losing to the Rams the first time, really is probably going to be a game they have to win this division. And so in the Rams' case, it's a clear path. And that's really this time of year, not everybody has a clear path. And to have one and go, you know what? All we got to go do is go put it together for 4 straight weeks, and we can win this division. I mean, you got to feel excited about that if you're in the Rams locker room and how they just played on Sunday.
Well, what do you know about the Rams locker room? Because you're so fresh, I have to think you still have an ear in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think they feel great. I mean, to have their guys back, there's a lot of confidence there. I think there's some teams that probably are a bad matchup for them defensively because of how young they are. And really, if you think about their defense, I mean, the young rushers are great, but I wouldn't say that they have the most team speed probably on defense that you would think of. And so some of these quarterbacks that are mobile give them trouble. You look at Kyler Murray, who gave him a lot of trouble early in the year. Jalen Hurts was able to move around on him in the Philadelphia game. And obviously, stopping Saquon and a great offensive line is a big challenge for a young young defense. But I think that really you look at who they have left. San Francisco, they played great the first time they played them and beat them at home. Can they do it again? New York Jets, they match up well with. The big one to me is Kyler Murray and the Cardinals at home. I mean, Kyler's always kind of gave them fits when he's hot and can run around. They can't get him on the ground. And then Seattle, they match up great with. So if I'm in that locker room, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, the leadership of that team, they're saying, hey, guys, in front of us are all teams we can beat. Two of those games we get to play at home. Like, we have an opportunity to go do something special, regardless of everything we've been through all season long. Counting us out, injuries, having to overcome all that adversity. We have a path to the playoffs. And if you can get young guys inspired, that rookie wall, as we call it, and say, hey, man, like, forget about being tired, forget about the season being over. We have a path to go make it to the playoffs. Get jacked up about it. I think they have that in front of them, and I think that's why I think that there's a chance we're about to see them make a run.
So let's go in that locker room, and obviously your best friend being Matthew Stafford. What's his mentality like? Have you spoken to him since the game?
Yeah, I texted him after the game. Listen, Matthew Stafford's a legend. He, as I say, I always call him John Wayne because that's who he is. He's one of the toughest, baddest dudes on the planet. He's that guy when you're sitting in the huddle with him as a lineman, you're not complaining about anything because that dude can get hit. He can have anything happen. He's never going to complain. He's never going to say a word. He's just going to go back there and make the next play it takes to move the football down the field and have success. Nobody's going to spend more time in the building than him. He's the first one there every day. So he's just the guy those guys all rally around and look up to. It's like protecting their big brother. And so you can tell that it means something to him. You've seen the last few weeks, his kind of talks to that group out on the field, that there's a mentality of we got something to prove and this is my football team, and they're following him. So that's why I feel pretty good about their chances right now of getting it going.
I think if you're an opposition team, you're looking at a guy like that with the experience that he has, the pair of receivers, and more than anything else, a coach who just doesn't give a fuck, and he's just going to put it out there to win these games.
Yep.
And that would seem to me to be the most dangerous combination. As somebody who knows this only so well, as we see by the trophy over your left shoulder, what do you believe is happening right now? How are they capturing this and putting this forward? Because I just want to know, I love with a player like you to pull the curtain back and take us inside that locker room.
Yeah, I think anytime any football team in general, especially one, in my opinion, and Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford on their team that really has been through some adversity. They've been through these situations where we can say what we want every week in the league. Your health and the guys you have available to you matter, whether you win football games or not. And you can be as determined as you want. You can have as good a system as you feel like you want to. If you don't have the guys that you expect to play in that system, you're not very successful. I mean, San Francisco's finding that out right now. We've seen that with other teams in years. If you don't have the guys you intend to play with, it's hard to be successful in this league. And they've overcome that. And that's why they're so dangerous right now. Because I look at it like it's a 12-round fight. And in the first 3 rounds, we got caught with some shots and we had to survive. And now as a football team, we're healthy. We got the guys we intended to play with. We have a clear road in front of us of how we can make it to the playoffs. Now we are the ones in the advantage, and we're the one throwing the shots. And when you're talking about somebody like Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, who've been to a Super Bowl, they've made a run like this before, even last year, going 7-1 down the stretch. They are confident, and they've also done it before. They've been there. And that means something when you look at playoff football and in the last half of the season. You're going to see the great coaches, the great players stick out, and the teams that have had bad years and have nothing to play for and they have bad cultures, it's going to stick out in the month of December. It's cold, you don't feel good, and you don't feel like being out there, and you've got to have something that makes you go out there and compete, and it's going to stick out who's in it for real this part of the year.
And that's especially where experience as a quarterback matters maybe more than ever. Tell us a Matthew Stafford story that we don't know.
Oh man, there's plenty of Matthew Stafford stories. He's got some legendary ones. I think when I think of him, of some of his ones in Detroit of overcoming injuries and things. But for me, I think maybe some people don't understand truly sometimes when you're what I would call one of the top quarterbacks in the league. You've made the money he's made. You've probably put in the time that he has. You think that that person probably runs a building and everything just serves to them. But it's the exact opposite with Matthew Stafford. This guy wants zero attention. He wants zero things about him. He's going to be there at 5 a.m. every Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Like he's going to be one of the first people in the building when you pull up in the parking lot. You're going in for treatment because you're banged up, but Matthew Stafford's there because that's what time he gets to work and that's what time he starts his film work. This dude lives and breathes his team and being at his best when his best is required. And he's never complained a day in his life about a hit or anything. I mean, the dude sometimes you sit there and you want to apologize to him in the huddle for a play or something that happened, and he doesn't even act like it happened. And that to me is one of those things as a lineman. It's something you rally around because you realize when my quarterback's tough, I have no excuses but to be tough. And I think that's something he inspires his guys to be. And with his toughness level, he's second to nobody.
Well, you two both pointed out that having both Cooper and Puka back on the field at the same time is tremendous for the Rams. And look, if you're playing the Rams and you're on defense, you got to cover both of them. I'm going to turn to defense for a minute because I was very excited for the Rams when they drafted Jared Verse. I think he was a good draft pick, and I'm excited to watch him develop. And I'm interested to know your thoughts on that side of the ball and what we're going to see from the defense over the next few weeks, particularly as the rookies develop.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing. If I'm Les Snead and I'm sitting here saying, what's the future of the Rams? I think anytime you start to talk about, hey, we got two young rushers that we drafted this year, obviously in Braden Fisk and Jared Verse we believe in, but also don't forget Byron Young the year before and how he's developing. So now really, if you look at it, Kobe Turner thrown in there as well in the season he had to finish last year and has been this year again, you have four guys second year or under. They're rookies or they're in their second year that you go, well, there's my D line for the next ever how many years. So now I get to build in the secondary. I get to add a piece on offense that we want. Like the future of this Rams defense, anytime that we're going to say up front, we're going to be good. Like I say, you look across the league, tell me the teams that have a good D line and a good O line that aren't good is very few that you can find. That is just the truth. And so for me, it's about how they're going to continue to develop. Jared Verse, I think, is very rare. I've compared him since training camp to Terrell Suggs. I think he's the same similar type of player. He can eliminate one side of the field. Teams are going to have a plan for when they play him in the run game, pass game, everything else. His physicality and his bull rush is up there in that upper echelon. I mean, he's got something like, if you want to be a young rusher, if you've got a move or a thing you can do that's like, whoa, that's as good as anybody. I remember the first time I faced Nick Bosa, feeling how powerful he was. I was like, man, this guy's going to be a really good football player. Because if you just have that one trait, everything else comes off of that. Jared versus bull rush is up there with anybody in the NFL. I don't care how old he is. It's up there with anybody in the NFL. He's going to be able to build a repertoire off of that. That's going to be his things he's going to do to attack people in the run game and pass game. So I just think really for the Rams, you got to be excited to watch these guys grow week by week. They're having an effect on football games. Are they going to be perfect? No. There's going to be teams that they don't match up well with, all right, because they are a young defense, and Chris Shula is a first-time coordinator. He's figuring it out as he goes as well. But I kind of like having a young first-time coordinator who's shown his ability to adjust. They've had some great performances this year, and they've been outmanned in some performances, but they're all growing together. And I think that's something you got to be excited about as a Rams fan.
Well, look, most games are won or lost at the line of scrimmage, so I think Les Snead deserves credit for recognizing, look, Aaron Donald, we're going to lose him at some point. And I'm going back a few years when people started rumoring, when is Aaron going to step aside? When is Aaron going to want to retire? And as you just noted, they've been planning for this for years, and they've done a good job assembling pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. I mean, two years in a row to kind of hit on two guys that can help you up front. That's very rare to have happen. I mean, you got four starters in two drafts in your defensive line. Like if they technically right now move to a 4-down front, they have their 4 starters for the next 2 or 3 years without question.
I love a 4-3.
So that, I mean, how many times can you say that in a draft that you nail it that way, that you're automatically, you have 4 D linemen that you're going to be your starters for the next 4 years? That's really very rare to have happen. So yeah, they're in a great position in that regard. There's a couple things you probably are going to see them add over the next year, probably a tight end at some point, a young tight end, maybe some secondary pieces. But this team has something to really build off. Anytime you nail it, it's no different than teams who nail it with an offensive line draft. And you go, you know what? They got a chance to be successful. Pittsburgh Steelers are a great example. Right guard McCormick, Frazier, the center, those guys have shown that, man, these dudes are going to be good offensive linemen for years to come. And they are a part of the reason that Steeler offense is having so much success. When you nail a draft up front, you see an instant impact on your football team.
I mean, I feel like I have to ask then, do you think that Russell Wilson should stay there? I mean, do you think that'll be the re-signing, or do you think he'll be elsewhere?
I think that the tough conversation for them will be, what is that number? I mean, I think it's, if you look at it, they have the pieces up front on offense and defensive line, really some good pieces offensively, really how they've played on the edge as a running back in the defensive backfield, everything to say, all right, we got a really good football team. What does that number do to us, though? Because a lot of these young guys are going to have to get paid if we want to keep them all. They got pass rushers galore. All right, how do we keep all this together? So to me, is that Russell Wilson number similar to something we've seen in between Baker Mayfield and what the top guys are getting paid, or is it up there with the top guys? If it's up there with the top guys, I think you got to move on. I don't think they can handicap their football team that way, nor do I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are really built like that. I don't think that's their mantra. But if it's something where Russell goes, look, I love playing here, I love being with Tomlin, and I want to be a part of this and figure out how I can get paid, but also make sure this football team stays good, then without question. Because what's come alive is you've seen Russell Wilson, because of this run game, because of the job Arthur Smith's done, he's actually grown throughout the year. Like, we're starting to see him use his legs more. They did RPOs this past week a bunch. He made some plays out of the pocket running with his legs, not stuff that we've really seen him do. We saw him do it years ago, but not here in the recent years. And so you almost see even his confidence in himself, his belief in what he's capable of is growing as the season's going. And Arthur Smith is finding ways to really accentuate that. So I think, to me, it's a great marriage at this point. And I think both sides are probably saying, how can we keep this thing going?
Aim, I want to come back to the Rams. I want to come back to looking ahead at San Francisco as well. But before we do that, it would be silly not to talk about Josh Allen. It would be silly not to talk about the absolute, as we would say, magnificent performance that he put on. What were your thoughts watching that?
It's just unbelievable. Honestly, it's like watching some amazing high school player play against a team that doesn't have anybody of his athletic comparison. Because when you watch him play in the league, it is crazy to watch. All right, he can sit in the pocket, and obviously we know this guy's got a cannon for an arm. He can throw it anywhere on the football field. But then when he needs to, he can put it in a shoebox from the pocket and, all right, let's create some pressure on him. There are multiple downs where Jared Verse wins, Braden Fisk wins, and instantly they win, and Josh is already gone. He's already disappeared from the pocket because he feels it, and he's out on the edge finding a way to extend the play. Or when he takes off, there's multiple plays where he's making DBs, safeties, linebackers, guys that should be more athletic than him miss and then outrunning them at times. And so it's just crazy to watch him play. I think Sean McVay said he was an alien, and that is the best description, because it doesn't seem like he's the same athlete that everybody else is. It seems like he's a step ahead. It's rare to watch him play. There's a couple of those guys in the league that when you watch him, you're like, man, just the athleticism is different. He is definitely in that case with like a Jamar Chase, a Lamar Jackson, some of those guys you see that you're just like, man, athletically, it's just not fair. And that's what Josh Allen is.
So let's look ahead at this Niners game that you're going to be seeing firsthand. They're banged up. They've got a bunch of guys in there that are hurt, Brandon Ayuk being one, obviously, and their running back is now questionable. What are you expecting in this matchup?
It's going to be a challenge. I mean, I think for the Rams right now, it's like, hey, you're hot. You've kind of found a little groove. You're confident, but they've got bad timing too, and that San Francisco actually possibly, they're saying Trent Williams could be back, Nick Bosa possibly back. Dre Greenlaw's kind of had this game circled as the game he's going to come back from his Achilles injury last year. Now, how effective you're going to be in your first game back off of something like that, I don't know. But it's kind of like you can tell this is kind of timed out where San Francisco knew this was going to be a huge game. It's a division matchup, and some of the injuries they had, this is kind of the one they felt like, hey, if we can get everybody back for this, we got a chance to fight our our way back in the division. And so it's going to be a challenge to go into San Francisco on the road and beat a team that's getting some of their guys back. But the thing the Rams have going for them is that they have confidence. And in this league, when you have confidence, you're healthy, and you've gotten into kind of a groove, we've seen it, where teams go on runs, and that's what they got to believe in. They got to go out there and start fast. I think the beginning 15 minutes of this game, if they let San Francisco feel like there's life, because the truth of San Francisco's situation is they're one loss from we can just go ahead and take them out of the conversation. All right? They are holding on by a thread. But when you give that team that's holding on by a thread a little bit of life at the beginning of a game, you're going to be in for a war. And you guys, you'll hear me say this. I tell this all the times in locker rooms. This is not Jingle Bell season. It's Jingle the Keys season. All right. Every locker room in the NFL, there's guys that have been through a long season. They're tired. They've thought about the offseason. They've thought about the playoffs. They've thought about what it would take to get to either one of them. And you got to be able in the month of December, if you want to play winning football and in the playoffs play winning football, it's about what guy can make the other guy jingle his keys in his pocket. When he starts thinking about going home, he thinks about locking up his apartment or his condo and heading back to his off-season villa, booking his plane tickets, where he's going when the season ends. What football team can force the other football team to jingle those keys? That's the key to December playoff football. If you can do that in December and in the playoffs, you're the team that comes out on top. It's a mentality this time of year of what team wants it more and can force that other team to think about how easy it'd be to just step out of the way and head off into the playoffs.
And nothing more excruciating in that jingle the keys regard than when you have games left on your schedule and you see the players are hiring the car transportation company. And so I mention that only because Andrew referenced the key analogy. And when you got games left to go and you see that players, you walk into the team parking lot and there's the giant car transport companies because they're already sending their cars home for the off season. And that's what you're saying. You want to send that. The Rams want to let the Niner players go, okay, we better send our cars home for the offseason.
Yeah, like, hey, you're in that game at some point, you've thought about it. Like, that's the reality. Guys talk about, hey, I want to play in the game, all these things. Listen, football is a violent game. It's intense. Like, you have moments of, man, just like any of us, like when you're tired and you don't want to go to work and you're like, man, do I have to do the podcast today? Do I have to do the show today? Like, I'm a little tired. Like, football players, it's the same thing. This game is violent. You're saying, man, do I have to strap it up on Sunday or on a short week on a Thursday and I got to go battle this dude all game long? That thought crosses your mind. Now, sure, the warrior comes back at some point, you get in the moment, but that thought crosses your mind. So this time of year, it's real easy to go, you know what, 3 or 4 more weeks, and man, I could head on out of here. Like, can you make a guy go there in his mind during a game is a real part of football this time of year, because they start to go, you know what, like, man, we're not going to win anyways. We're not going to the playoffs anyways. So, you know what, I'm going to stay out of the situation. Maybe it's a tackle I don't quite get in on. Maybe it's a ball that I could have got on, but I didn't want to jump down there and get it because just for 1 second I hesitated. What team hesitates matters this time of year.
I'd never heard it referred to as jingle the keys or car jingle, but we used to refer to it as who's going to be sending that transport for their car.
You must have been so pissed. I can imagine as like the president of the team, you were like, wait, what the hell is that doing in the parking?
It's terrible. It's just deflating. And look, you know, if you're with a team and you know your season's over and you know you're not going to the playoffs, it's hard in every way. But when you drive in that parking lot and you see those giant transports there and players are loading their cars in, that's hard.
It is. And that's why, I mean, you see the teams that really are like, hey, next year you can build off of. Like, I've had this conversation before in Cincinnati. Some of the worst years we had, I knew we were going to be good the next year just because of how we handled those last 4 or 5 games. Because you can see the teams that there is a turn in, like, hey, everyone's losing their jobs, but you know what? We have a sense of pride of how we do things around here and how we're going to compete no matter what. And some of those teams that finished with the best record we could have in those last 4 or 5 games, even though it was a lost season, it turned into a division division championship the next year. It turned into sweeping the division the next year in 2009 for me as a Bengal. In 2011, it turned into that after the 2010 season. We get Andy Dalton, AJ Green. We go to the playoffs 5 years in a row after going 4-12. But you go back and look, in those 4-12 seasons, we finished 3-1, or we finished, we won 3 out of 5. Some kind of streak where you see some pride in the organization. It leads to that next season. So this time of year can tell you a lot about every franchise in the league.
Well, meanwhile, Joe Burrow, since you mentioned Cincinnati, I mean, what did you think watching that game on, what day is it? Tuesday, on Monday night? That was just insane.
It was. I mean, Joe Burrow's continued to show why he is regarded the way he is. I mean, he's a special football player. I've gotten to spend some time with him, and he is a rare human being. And I think he's one of those guys that has this rare trait, which we see some of the special quarterbacks have, that he just makes everyone around him better. He elevates the expectations of all the players around him. You just feel he's inevitable in some ways with just the spirit and aura he carries about him. He's sometimes scary. He's so locked in. I think he's a very rare guy. I hope that as an organization, they do a good job of putting him in a position to have success, and what that looks like and how they can organize that. To me, I've said it multiple times, and I go back to it, and I know they have put some investment into the defensive side of the ball. But for me, I just felt like, even though he loves Tee Higgins, he loves Jamar Chase, 2 years ago when they lost the AFC Championship to Patrick Mahomes after going to the Super Bowl and losing to us, then they get in the AFC Championship. That was your rebound, like, we're going to get there this year. They lose that game. I just think, knowing who they are as an organization, they should have picked their receiver, which at that time it was probably Jamar Chase, and I think it still is without question, and said, all right, let's trade Tee Higgins. Let's get the draft picks. And you say, well, wait, you got 2 young, unbelievable players. But to me, you are Cincinnati Bengals. You are never going to be a team that's going to take aggressive money plays with players and paying all these guys. You're never going to be the Philadelphia Eagles of pushing money way down the road. You're never going to have big trades that you're going to make for huge players and leverage draft picks. You got to know who you are. You're going to draft for your success. So you hit big. You can't keep them all. You can't be greedy. Trade one. Get the picks and start to build the football team around Joe Burrow on the defensive side by investing not just some picks, but a top pick, a first rounder, a second rounder, continually investing in picks around him so that you hit on some and get him a defense that can withhold. Because the Super Bowl year, and even the year they went and played the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, how were they defensively? Just middle of the road. That's all Joe Burrow needs. He doesn't need you to be dominant. Just get enough pieces where he can say, all right, we can make some stops and I'll outscore the other team. But when they're in the back half of the league on defense, it doesn't do any good to have a bunch of weapons and score a bunch of points if you can't stop anybody.
So then, am I correct in reading between the lines here that you're concerned that this could be the best it's going to be for Joe Burrow if they don't do something drastic there?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point now, you've waited so long. Like, what's the leverage with Tee Higgins? He's had a year where he's been banged up. He hasn't been as productive in years past. And of course, here you are now. It's like, man, maybe next year he would have a productive year and you'd be able to pay him. But I even saw Joe say he's going to do everything he can to make sure Tee Higgins is there next year. But I mean, what system? Like, two insanely paid receivers and a crazy paid quarterback. Like, I don't know if that's the system to win football games. Is it a system where Joe Burrow is going to have an easier life and be able to put up a lot of stats? Sure. I don't know if that's the stat that really going to match up with wins, though. And I think having the best football team is going to be wins. You look at Patrick Mahomes. How have they won games? Being great on defense, having a really good offensive line, and then letting Mahomes do his thing, win in the game situations. You look at Tom Brady's teams, like how good they were at being able to just, hey, the whole entire team is made up of really good, solid players. We don't have to have superstars. In time to time, we're going to add superstars here or there, and that's going to take us over the top. And I think that's just what Cincinnati has to say is, how do we make the team really good and then know that we've got something really special at quarterback who can win a lot of in-game situations for us? Yeah,
because it would kill me to see a player of that caliber. He gets that one appearance, and name me a single player that cares about stats more than Super Bowl appearances or rings at that. It just seems like such an incredible waste of great talent. Let's talk quickly Lions before we move on and have some more just questions about who you've seen that you like the best in person, et cetera. But you watched a masterclass on play calling with Dan Campbell. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on not only on how he coaches, but also wondering if you think the Lions are the best team in football right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the impact Dan Campbell has is so rare to hear. Obviously I think a lot of Sean McVay and his leadership, and to hear Jared Goff talk about Dan Campbell being, the rarest leader he's been around. I think that's just an ultimate compliment, and I think that he's a really special dude. You can tell that. You can tell just the energy of the building, the belief they have is so rare. But watching that Packers-Lions game, because I got a lot of respect for the team Matt LaFleur and the Packers have. I mean, I think they're right there as one of those teams that you'd probably say if they just weren't quite so young at a lot of the skill positions, they are right there on the edge of being one of the top teams in the NFC. They are really talented, and they played a heck of a game as well. But to watch Detroit take their best shot. I mean, the Green Bay had that game circled from jump, that they were going there to lay their claim of where they stood in the NFC. To watch Detroit, to me, it was like not being in control of the game, but have Green Bay answer, have this huge momentum swing at the end of the half, at the beginning of the second half, and then Detroit have to go, all right, we'll drive down and score again. Green Bay go score. Detroit, all right, we'll go down and score again. To just keep re-answering the bell, to me, shows you how good of a football team you are. It's not like, oh, man, we played a good game. But every time we needed it, we drove down the football field. We found a way to get points. We found a way to get back in the lead, to put ourselves back in a situation to win this game. And then Dan Campbell, just the guts he has to keep making calls the way he was. I mean, even the ending, I mean, don't even really need it. You could try the field goal then, but you know what? We want to make sure they have no other chance to win this game. He's willing to roll the dice. And Jared told us in postgame, like he told us all week, because we're down guys on defense, every fourth and even close, 2 yards, 3 yards, whatever it is, if we have a chance to flip it and steal a possession, we are taking it. It's not a decision. And he stuck by it. And I think that's part of the reason he did it at the end of the game. A lot of people have criticized that decision, but I think he did it because that was his promise to his football team, that you guys go compete. We're going to stay aggressive. We're going to steal possessions, and we're going to win this football game. And we can critique it all we want, but the end result was his football team believed in him. He believed in them, and they won the football game against a really good football team. So I think, to me, I think that performance there put them over the edge to me, because I kind of had Philadelphia Eagles on the run they were on. Like, man, they look like that team that might be trying to put themselves at the top of the league, the way they're running the football and how talented they are up front on both sides of the ball. But that game, that kind of served as my, all right, you know what, seeing them up close and personal and how good Green Bay's playing, the Lions are the best team in football right now.
Well, and to your point about the Lions being down defenders, and the coach was aware of that, and Jared Goff was aware of that. And you know what the offense did in Detroit? They held the ball for over 60% of the game. So you know what the best thing to do when you're down defensive players? Say to your defense, we got this. We're going to hold the ball over 60% of the time, and you can stay on the sideline. And I thought that was tremendous by them. Question for you both. You just raised a few minutes ago the issue of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And, a question for you, Andrew, in particular, although I want to hear what Suzy has to say on this as well, their tackle issue. We've seen it all season. We've seen they've had problems with the tackles. We've seen the adjustments that they have made. We've seen the additions of players. How big an issue is that going to be going into the playoffs? How are they going to overcome it? Can they overcome it? Can other teams exploit it? Let us hear it all.
Well, I'll tell you this first. I mean, I was taking some sets the last few weeks, because when I would turn on the Kansas City Chiefs tape, I'd be like, listen, if the only thing they're short of making this Super Bowl again and setting a record in NFL history of winning 3 in a row is a left tackle, I mean, I think I could get like 10, 15 snaps in there. Come on. But you know what? Signing DJ Humphries is the biggest move to me for them, because if you looked at this team, I would have said, if you look across all the league, you're trying to find the teams and the reason they might lose a game. Like, what's the reason this team's going to go down? And the Chiefs, for me, was the tackle situation, in the sense that, when you talk about really their situation, the left tackle and the struggle he was having, and really the young kid just couldn't make it. Then they bring in another, and they're rotating guys in there. They're moving Tooney over at times when that's going to get exploited in the playoffs. But when they signed DJ Humphries, I was like, man, I don't know if he's healthy. Obviously tore his ACL a year ago. Is he going to be able to come in here and be a factor? To him to come in and play, You see him play against Khalil Mack, which probably, if I was going to sign up for the worst possible scenario coming off an ACL, I got to play Khalil Mack. To be able to go out and play and watch him function, he's going to be just fine. He just needs to keep a couple games to get his legs under him, feel good about playing. But he looks good, and he's a heck of a football player for the Arizona Cardinals for many years. And so I think that really put them back in a situation where I'm like, all right, I'm fine. I'm good with everything going on, because here's the thing. We've critiqued them at different points of this run they've been on, of like offensively, even last year. Like they only averaged like 19 points a game the last 6 games of the year last year. But what they do in the playoffs? They scored 24 or 25 points a game and went on to win a Super Bowl. So they've been able to show that they can turn the switch and just say, hey, turn the engine on, let's go, it's playoff time. They've shown it. And until somebody can prove that they can't do it, we've got to believe them for that, because you could on one hand critique all these close losses, or on the other, we can sit here and you both know this as well as anybody. What does the NFL always come down to? The last 5 minutes of the game. What percentage of NFL games are 1-score games? Mm-hmm. And every year we act like that's some crazy thing, and then we critique the team who, guess what, they're the best in the world at? The last 5 minutes of a game, they find a way to win. Last time I checked, that's really an important part of playing NFL football and winning games. So the Kansas City Chiefs have proven they make great decisions. When have we sat here and criticized an Andy Reid last 5 minutes of the game decision?
Never.
Or a Steve Spagnuolo last 5 minutes of the game decision? It doesn't happen. Patrick Mahomes, same thing. They dominate the last 5 minutes of the game every year. And as long as they keep doing that, they will keep winning games. And when you get in the playoffs and games scores are decided by even a closer margin, guess what you're the best at? Winning the game in the last 5 minutes of the game. So I think, to me, we can talk about it all year long. We can be mad about there's not all this wow factor to their team, but all I care about is winning. Mm-hmm. And if we're winning, that's what matters.
Just win, baby.
And getting it done in those last minutes. And you know that left tackle position better than anybody else.
Suzy, just so you know, when he does continue those reps and comes back, he broke that news on What the Football.
Could you play now?
There is no question I could play some snaps, but I don't think I'd ever do it. I feel too good. I'm happy. I work out every day. I train all the time. I even opened my own gym out here in Westlake, California, and I am happy, and there's no pain, so I'm good. Daddy, I'm good. I'm happy being a dad, being at home, hanging out, and doing Thursday night football. So that's good.
Have you had any calls?
No calls. No, I'm not throwing it out there.
Oh, he's going to get them now.
Every now and then, you get in the weight room,
yeah.
You feel confident, and you're like, hey, let me get a couple sets in just to see if I still got it. And I did a couple sets a couple weeks ago and felt really, really, really good.
Oh, those calls are going to come now.
No. No calls. They don't call 43. I'll turn 43 on Thursday. Rams, Niners. 43rd birthday. Let's go.
On your birthday,
on the game
I like
day.
it.
Wow.
On my birthday.
Okay, are you listening to me, everybody at Amazon? Bring them a cake.
Yeah, I want to just go back really quickly to Kansas City, just because obviously, I mean, when you're a reporter, Amy, the first person I've said this before, the first person that you interview is usually the left tackle. You always go to talk to the O-lineman to learn how the offense is set up, et cetera. But we have seen Patrick Mahomes get sacked a career high amount of times, 32, 33, I think somewhere around there. But how quickly can an O-line gel like that when you're looking at somebody protecting the quarterback and they have had so much movement there? How much do you think that could be an issue moving forward? Or do you just feel like, I hate it when I ask two questions, or do you feel like you're looking at a player who's got a next level ability to get out of problems? It's just, to me, I just have that concern at the line.
Yeah, and I think the answer to both those questions would be yes to the second one. And to the first one, I think that's where DJ Humphries is a huge factor, because what people have to understand is a lot of times your issues are, Dawan Taylor's kind of always been up and down for them at right tackle since they signed him. Even last year was a big concern. His penalties, where he's aligning on the football, he's giving away pass plays. He needs to scoot up on the line of scrimmage. It's been a whole conversation. But what he's shown the ability to do is at least be consistent enough they can rely on winning football games and play within the scheme with him. Well, at left tackle, that's really been the biggest problem, is that's been something where it's literally been a turnstile. It's been like guys are getting beat immediately. They're having to do all these things to help them adjust their offense, adjust the way the ball gets out, all these things. If DJ Humphries can be really just a version of himself, because he's a really good football player and he's good enough, without question, talent-wise, to give them a huge upgrade at that position. Now, I don't have to put so much attention to one spot in my offensive line. Now I can start to say, all right, there's some plays we might help, but sometimes we're going to go over here on the right side and help Juwan Taylor, because right now we kind of have a situation where one side's a little inconsistent and the other side's very inconsistent. And so once you kind of eliminate one of those things offensively for Andy Reid, he gets to open the playbook up a little more. He gets to design things a little differently. He gets to say, hey, sometimes we don't have to have plays where Patrick's got to be really aware of how much time he's got. We've got some chances to throw the football down a little more. We can trust this side of the line of scrimmage a lot better, because what they do have is an insanely good interior three. And now they get to kind of build their offense around those things. And that's why I think DJ Humphries was a huge move for them. And I think it's going to be something that's really going to be a factor. And I'm interested to see how we see their offense kind of finish this season, to see how much belief they have in DJ, and does that adjust a little bit of how they call the game plan.
Who's the best team you've seen in person?
Ooh,
man, it would be right there between the Lions and Eagles, for sure. I think when you watch the Baltimore game, we had obviously had Baltimore and Cincinnati, which was an epic game as well. Another game where Joe Burrow goes insane and loses. But Lamar Jackson was great, and he's a heck of a player. Baltimore's defense, secondary wise, scares me. And so I think that, I think for me, I'd have to go down to the Lions, only because of really, I think a lot of that Packers team, and I think that they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. They've been really good this year and really got on a streak. Coming into that game, they were hot, and the Lions kind of took on that and really were able to answer the bell and continuously, even down players because of injury, win that game in a big division matchup against a team that was hot coming in. So I think Detroit Lions, to me, really, that they're the team right now as far as the guys I've seen in person that I'm like, I believe in this football team. It's them.
Okay, you've named teams. Let's talk about players. Are you one who is happy about or resistant to predicting or suggesting MVPs at this time of the year? Do you prefer to wait till the end of the season? Do you have your eyes on an MVP?
Well, here's the good news, y'all. I'm a lineman, so whatever I say, people will be like, he's a lineman. He doesn't know shit anyway. So it's great. I'm good with it. Here's what I would say. Right now for me, I think everybody's got their theory behind MVPs and what they think. And, Richard Sherman, who I work with in Thursday Night Football, obviously my brother, we're really close. He is a huge statistical guy. He hates when it's not the guy who statistically is just dominating the league. Like for him, it's Joe Burrow without question. Forget your records or whatever. Like if it wasn't for his team and how bad they're playing, he's without question the MVP. So he would probably say you give it to Saquon because he's the next guy in that category. And then there's obviously the guys who are for Josh Allen and really the impact he's had. I mean, Jared Goff, if it wasn't for one game, without question would be probably at the top of that MVP conversation because of the year he's had and how awesome he's played the position. For me, it's Saquon Barkley, because I look at it by team. If I took this guy off, where would they be or what would they do? And then statistically, has he really been the guy who is the impact for them? I mean, you look at it, they just won a game in a really close game against the Carolina Panthers where the quarterback threw for 100 yards. And how do they do that? Because they just say, you know what, even if the passing game's not working, hand it off to Saquon Barkley and trust this offensive line. And I think that Saquon has answered the bell. He's in a great situation with a line that is one of the best in football, but he has been the MVP for them because since they went to let's give the football to Saquon at whatever amount of times it takes to win football games after their bye week, they have been on a streak where nobody's been able to beat them, and they've dominated the league since then. So to me, you are the most valuable piece of why they are successful.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. The temptation is always to give it to the quarterback, but every game he's so dominating. His runs are so he's dominating is the only word I can think for him.
And Andrew, you just pointed to the offensive line in Philadelphia, and so to state the obvious, he's not rushing like this if he's still with the Giants because of the difference in offensive line. But the reason I note that is I will tell you from a front office perspective, if you are with the Giants and you lose a player like Saquon, but you lose him to a divisional rival, it's like every time you watch him play, you want to take a pencil and stab yourself in the eye.
Oh yeah, that's not a happy place to be. You watch him play and you go, "How does this guy leave our building?" That one's crazy. I don't know if I'll ever understand that decision for a lot of reasons, but I don't. That's the first thing I said when I watched him play in person. I was like, "How do you ever let this guy leave your building
and leave him for a divisional rival?" That's like
well,
double
and
Scrabble
the human
points.
being.
Yeah.
It's the player's amazing, but the human being is special. He's a rare dude. I mean, I remember earlier in the year when he had a chance to break the record in the one game against the Giants, and he's like, "No, man, let all the other guys get theirs, man." I think this, when you look at the human being, the person, the player, how talented he is, I don't get it. Like for me as a GM or in those positions, like we can talk money all we want, but talk to me about human beings that make people around them better. They create a culture where it's about winning games, being at our best when our best is required. Like those things have to go into the conversation. It's not just about dollars and cents. And the most asinine comment I ever heard was the comment he said about you don't pay, Daniel Jones what you pay him to hand the ball off to a $12 million quarterback. Well, you're paying Daniel Jones $40 million. So if you included what Saquon Barkley's making, you still wouldn't add up to what the top quarterbacks are making a year and $55 million. So that doesn't even make any sense, because actually, if you're paying your quarterback $40 million, you would pay another $15 million for the running back who makes the difference in him being a better football player, because that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. So I just think when you talk about the human being, what the cost was, and the player, gosh, I don't understand how he leaves your building.
Well, and to your point about the running game, one of a quarterback's best friends, as we all know, is the running game, because the better your running game, the less pressure there is on your quarterback in the passing game. And I will just note this as to your point about what Saquon did when they offered him the ball and he said, no, let the other guys. That to me, it gave me goosebumps then. It gave me goosebumps that you just mentioned it. And he did something similar last week when the crowd was chanting MVP, MVP. And he said that means a lot to me. But what we need to do is win.
Yeah, but this just plays into the conversation that we had with Marshall Faulk, and I'll have it all the time about the devaluing of the running back position.
Silly.
And it makes me insane because, I mean, from an owner's perspective, I get it's a shorter term deal, but what is football without the running game?
Thank you.
It makes me crazy.
Hey, you can say it twice.
Yeah.
You say it over and over again. Okay?
Sing it, Suzy. Sing it.
Listen, I mean, like I said, you look across the league. I mean, look at the teams that are really good, and look what they have. They have great offensive lines. They have stout defensive lines. They're able to get after the quarterback. Like, we can talk about all these skill guys all we want, and I'm sure that's exciting, and fantasy owners love them. But when you're talking about your team and you're mad they're not good enough, tell me about how good your tackles are. Tell me about your interior three linemen. Are they able to get push in the run game? In your D-line, are they able to set blocks and get off and stop the run and get to the quarterback in critical moments of the game? The Kansas City Chiefs have laid out how you play winning football over and over and over again. The San Francisco 49ers have shown it. I think it's just continued to be why Philadelphia Eagles are really good, why the Baltimore Ravens are really good. You look at the teams that win every year, they're up there in that top category of teams that are successful or make the playoffs. They play really good football up front on the offense and defensive lines.
Do you want to coach? Do you want to GM? What do you want to do?
I'm in a curious state where I just do it all, right? I've started a podcast with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm doing Thursday Night Football. I'm helping coach my kids in their sports. I've done some consulting stuff with just a couple teams across the league, just helping out with like, hey man, just some guys are, interviewing and, giving opinion last couple off seasons. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, I'm up for anything. I think anything that is about competing and passion for a game that I love, and I think it's changed my life, and I look forward to any way I can help other people have that same kind of change in theirs, man. I think this game is unfreaking believable, and any way I can support it, I'm in.
What youth sports are you coaching?
Right now it's basketball. I coach my 10-year-old daughter's basketball team, my 12-year-old and 13-year-old son's basketball teams, and then I just got done coaching their football teams this past fall. So it was fun. I didn't do soccer for Catherine this year, but we decided to let her have a real soccer coach. I don't know if you know this, but not a lot of 6'7", 330-pound soccer coaches or players for that matter. So I wouldn't say that I had a lot of expertise to give her on the soccer field. So yeah, we will let somebody else do that.
So I'm the only one of the three of us that is not a youth basketball coach, because
That's true.
Suzy is as well. Of course, I did do all the rebounding at the recent Big 3 street tournament.
Well, I mean, and by the way, I'd be afraid that you would. Can you imagine? You're like one hip check away. I mean, 'cause,
Elbows,
like,
elbows, Suzy. I use elbows.
true story. Hold on. Let me unpack something really quick. Okay. Can you imagine, first of all, you being the coach, like the opposition comes on the field, they're like, they see Bigwood out there, they're like, oh shit, we're going to lose every single game.
You know what the worst part is?
I'd be scared of
The
you
actual
too, Suzy.
worst part is post game when we get whipped by some team and they're like, the whole entire group of kids, all they want's a picture with me. And so my kids are like, man, they just whooped us. They're like upset. They're dang near crying. And it's like, there's our coach. He's over there taking a photo op with the other team. And it's like, I don't know what to do. These kids just whipped us. They're like sweethearts. They're all, 10, 11, 12 years old. And they're so excited that like, holy crap, it's a former Rams player as their coach. And so I'm over there doing a photo op with them, then running over to my team to try and console them. It's always an awkward situation, but I just love seeing these kids play. I'm not one of these guys that like gets into it to the point of like, we're going after this other team. I'm out here to help these kids understand the game of football and what competing means. And so I have a real appreciation for both sides of the ball.
I had the same problem on Sunday when we lost the championship game in the Goldies Youth Sports League. I had the same problem when I got surrounded by young girls who want to take pictures with me. And I was like, guys, we just lost the game. I'll be with you in a second.
Give me a break.
And meanwhile,
Give me a second.
My team was so busy running to the front of the King Cone line to get an ice cream after the game. I'm like, guys, we just lost the game. And I'm mad. And I'm sitting here thinking this fucking fast break and how good Cora was, and I can't stop her. And they're off getting pictures of King Cone. I mean, they're taking selfies with ice cream, and I'm like, nobody wants to take a picture with me. So I relate to your pain. It's not easy when you lose that game and you're still stuck in it. I'm trying to explain to these girls the triangle offense, and they're looking at me like, what?
I'd like to see you two coach against one another. I'd be there with an ice cream cone watching that.
Oh no, I'm horrendous.
There we go.
I'm a total masshole. I mean, I'm out there throwing it all on the field. So I'm
just the ice cream guy. I'm there for them to have fun. Listen, we're gonna go get ice cream after the game, no matter what. Everyone have a good time.
No, I know. But youth sports are the greatest, and I love that you're doing that, especially for your daughters. It is so important to
really
see
special.
that. Okay, quick. This is just my Aaron Donald story, because we were playing Sierra Canyon a couple weeks ago, and my daughter, who's a pretty aggressive point guard, she got hip checked, and she went flying across. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, oh, like getting in the grill, and I see it's Daryl's kid. So I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because this girl was like, I mean, she was aggressive and she had it going on. I was like, oh, so that's where the apple falls, and there's the tree, and I get it. So,
yep.
I just kind of love all that youth sports stuff. I think you're the greatest. Thanks again for your time. I have so many more questions, so we're going to have you come back another time if you don't mind. But
and if you do come
anytime.
back,
thank y'all so much.
And if you do come back, and if you do come in studio, I will bring the ice cream.
Yes, you will.
There we go. Now I'm in. Now you know how to get to me.
No idea. That's all Amy does
cream.
is eat ice cream. It's fantastic. Thanks again for your time. We hope to see you really soon. And happy birthday. Enjoy this Thursday night.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank y'all so much.
Take care. So great to have Andrew Whitworth with us on this podcast. And if you're curious about that conversation that we did have with Marshall Faulk about the devaluing of the running backs, go back and take a look at it at the Rich Eisen Show YouTube channel. How you get there, I have no idea, but you can find it. Go find that edition of What the Football. We thank you again for this one, and we will see you next week.